Very good. Is everybody, very good. Test. Testing my sound right now. Make sure you can all hear me. There we are. Sounds good. Nice and bright, fanciful. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Satsang, and we just now have people that are starting to arrive. Oh, hi from England. Hi, Jane. Nice to have you. Although there we go. Now it's all showing up. Judy's here. my one of my great students. Manix Mix. Hello from England. Brian in Virginia. Yes, sir. Good day, G. Good day, Brian. Brian's been around a long time too, back from the my old Conversations with G day. What do you think about me reviving that? Putting it out on a podcast or something? I don't know. Take a poll. Many of you don't even know what it was. It was a radio show podcast that I did for 2 years, I think, over 100 episodes, and some of them very long, some of them very, very long. So I guess you can all hear me. So because I'm not hearing anybody say, talking about me mouthing words, and I've got a couple of questions here, and of course, as always, I solicit everybody's questions. So give it another minute here, a little bit. I'll just kind of idle chit-chat. Brian says yes. Thank you, Brian. Give some idle chit-chat while I wait for more people to join. Maybe it'll be a small group. I forgot to mail today until like 20 minutes before Satsang and put any notice on Facebook as well. If anybody wants to be my administrator and help me organize my life, I'm like totally wide open. It would be a real help. So, hi Jim, if you're in Massachusetts. Jill, sorry, Jill Whalen. I really should wear my glasses when I do satsang, right? Hi Jill, nice to have you. Hi to everybody. Well, I'm just going to invite everybody as we start satsang to just let go of everything that's happened in your entire life and in all prior lives up until this moment. And just be here present with me for the next hour or so. You know, it's a funny thing about the past. It doesn't actually exist except as a thought in our minds. I mean, you can't really find the past, can you? I mean, if I asked you to show it to me, you couldn't. You could talk about it. You could give me all sorts of ideas of what you thought it was, including, past lives and in-between lives and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, outside of your thoughts about it, your beliefs in it, it really doesn't have any existence whatsoever. And yet we put so much weight on it, as if it was so instrumental, it was so powerful, it was so influential on our lives. What if I were to tell you that it isn't actually the past or any part of the past that's influencing your present, but it's only your beliefs about the past that you're holding right now that are influencing your present? What would you make of that? You could throw some comments in here if you like. Hi, Pam in Norfolk, UK. Thank you for joining me. Now really ponder that. What if the entirety of your past, including past lives, karmas, traumas, soul contracts, all of it could be dismissed just like that. Would that seem too simple? Would that seem unfair? Would that seem like I was diminishing all of the things that had happened to you, all the traumas and stuff that you had to go through and all the experiences you had? Would it seem like in some way it belittled that and you'd want to hold on to them? Or would you be willing to say, oh God, yes, let the whole thing go? Really ponder that for a second. Is there anything actually holding you except what you happen to be believing is true in this moment? That's a real question, folks. It's one I ask myself all the time. I mean, I teach the whole process of how the nervous system got into the state it was. Inner reconciliation is just really explaining how we got into a defensive posture. The various kinds of experiences we had that created particular reactive patterns that are active right now. But my ultimate goal is not to just give you some kind of therapy, but to cut to the chase, to cut to the quick, to cut right to the center of it, and that is nothing can influence you except what you believe in this moment. It isn't a trauma that happened in the past that is creating this moment. It's your belief in the trauma. Your belief in the trauma sustains all the reactions. Yeah, things happened. I'm not saying that nothing happened in the past. But what I'm saying is the number one influence, the thing that really keeps it all in place, is not the event itself, but the belief you hold about the event right now in this moment. Now, if that's true, if what I'm saying is true, it means that you can let go of everything. All 10,000 lives, if that's what it's been, in one fell swoop. That's exactly what the Buddha did. When he saw that all of experience, all cause and effect, was in fact nothing but the projection of his own mind. And he dropped it. And the chain of causation and karma was cut forever. And Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one. Awakened to what? Awakened to our own nature and the nature of perception. How does that feel to you when I say that? Does it feel threatening? Does it feel liberating? I am inviting your comments here because it's really important. I'm trying to kind of give you the shortcut, the way off the self-help treadmill, the way off of all teachings, including my own, and just kind of like take you right to the end game. So Jane says it's liberating. So how do we drop it all? It is the mind that asks, how do I do it? And so I want you to put that aside for a second and focus on what it is you're actually doing. What does it mean to drop it all? It means to see through the erroneous belief that some event external to myself has been creating my life. That's what Buddha meant. He said that one of the primary practices of the Bodhisattva was becoming adept at distinguishing the perceptions of your own mind. One of the most primary practices there is in Buddhism. You won't hear it very often. It's from a very rarely quoted and rarely read sutra called the Lankavatara, which is really kind of the textbook of Zen Buddhism, the sudden school of enlightenment. And so to perceive that it is my beliefs in this moment that are creating my experience, and nothing external to me, is the means by which you drop it. Because, you think that your experience is being created by circumstances, by the past, by traumas, by past lives and all of that, right? That's what's creating this moment. It's not. It's your belief in past lives and karma and traumas and the effect that they have that is creating this moment. It's very subtle. And so the dropping becomes a seeing. It isn't a wrestling match. It isn't therapy. It becomes a seeing. You see, oh my God, I'm only experiencing the projections of my own mind. The universe is like a mirror that is simply reflecting back to me the content of my own mind. In fact, you could see that the universe is the content of my own mind. Or rather, the universe is my mind, which is exactly what Buddha said. Not that our minds influence the universe, but the universe is the mind. Your thinking is experience, and experience is thinking. So what are you believing? That becomes the only question that matters. Jane says, liberating. Pam said, it would be such a relief. Yes. Barbara says, greetings from Idaho. Hi, Barbara. Wonderful. That sounds so easy, said Jane. Yeah. Yeah, it is. The mind will say it isn't, right? Because it's contrary to everything we've been taught. So, yeah, it is easy. It is easy to get. One could say it's not easy to implement, but that's only because of the, again, what Buddha referred to as the habit energy of beginningless projections. The habit of projecting a universe made out of thought, and the fundamental ignorance. Remember, ignorance is the source of the delusion, and ignorance is where the whole thing starts, and it ends up with enlightenment. When ignorance goes away, you have enlightenment. What is ignorance? Ignorance is believing that the universe exists separate from my thought, and therefore is an external influence acting on me, rather than the universe is my thought. There is no external influence. I'm creating it all. I am making absolutely everything based on my thinking and beliefs. Now this is close. If you water that down, if you water that idea down, you end up with metaphysics and the law of attraction. It's a watered down version of this. And I say watered down, diluted, because both of those approaches believe in some kind of an external universe and that my thinking influences it. The Buddhist approach is no, it isn't an external thing that I'm influencing. It is nothing but my thinking. There is no external thing. Now, to wrestle with that idea is a little bit of doing, because we have been taught from the get-go that the universe exists externally to me. We've been taught that from the get-go. Everyone you meet believes it. Are all of our world systems, both religious, scientific, medical, economic, political, are all based on that assumption being true. And then people like the Buddha come along, or a Christ, or a Muji, or an Atmananda, or Ramana, or Nisargadatta, and they say, no, that's not the case at all. It does not exist externally. There is no such thing as an external existence. It is the consciousness-only model. And they seem crazy, except for the fact that they're peaceful. And things just seem to happen for them. Things just kind of magically unfold. You know, somebody would get in Christ's presence and suddenly blind people could see. I mean, where is that coming from? Right? There was no blindness in Christ's universe. There's no blindness in his thoughts and his beliefs. He had no beliefs. He saw himself as one with God, as the manifestation of that. And as a result, there were no limits. There were no boundaries. There was nothing external. If you could focus all of your attention on that and nothing else, the path to awakening would be very short and very quick. All of the other things that I teach, and I have a lot of them, are all to meet various levels of consciousness, various levels of ignorance, where it is to bring it up one step at a time. If you can end run the entire thing, more power to you. God bless you. Right? But there's plenty to help you walk through the entire process. Hello from Sweden. Hi, Barbara, and VXR Works. Hi from Panama City Beach, Florida. Hi. Have I done it, G? I do it all the time. Pam asks if I've done it. I do it all the time. It's the only thing that I do. It's my only practice. Right? It's not that it's like this. Even for a Buddha, the thoughts and feelings and beliefs still arise. But they're seen as thoughts and feelings and beliefs. They're not seen as an external reality anymore. Right? I don't perceive the universe as an external reality. I have searched diligently the entire range of my perception, and I can find no evidence within my experience of something existing outside of my experience. I find plenty of beliefs that it does, and I see the effect of those beliefs, but I can find no actual evidence for it. And I invite you to try it yourself. Can you step outside of your perception and verify the existence of something separate from your perception? You can't do it. So at the very least, we should say the assumption that there's an external material universe that exists independently of me is an unprovable theory. And yet the entire world is based on a theory that's unprovable. You cannot prove it. At the same time, I have this overwhelming evidence that everything appears within my consciousness. And yet, for some reason, that seems absurd. What do you mean it's all in your mind? Of course it's out there. Show it to me. Well, it was right there. Well, you're showing me consciousness. You're showing me something within my experience. Show me something out of my experience. Validate its existence. You can't do it. And the only reason this isn't easy, the only reason we just, boom, don't go right to it, is because of the weight of the habit energy of believing in an external existence. The second bodhisattva rule, the practice that Buddha put forth was perceiving the non-existence of external existence. Folks, I'm not making it up. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Perceiving the non-existence of external existence. Now, a lot of people say, well, there's nothing out there, and you'll hear Advaita teachers talk about that, and that's nonsense. It's nonsense the way they mean it. There's nothing there. Nothing exists. It's not true. This is neither a denial, that's nihilism, but it's not realism either. And realism is, oh yeah, it exists externally. What Buddha would say instead is, it exists as a perception in the mind, and not as an external entity. Are you following this? I'm giving you the pure. There is no teaching higher than this. There is nothing deeper than this. I mean, this was the quintessential teaching of the Buddha that he gave to bodhisattvas, not to just the regular ignorant beings. I wouldn't talk to another group of people. This is satsang. So I'm talking different. Some people I'll talk through neuroscience and the functions of the brain and chemistry and all that kind of stuff. You know, I know enough about that to pretend I know something. Right? But I know that those are all just projections of the mind. It's just the way we perceive things. But the truth is in the perceiving and not in what is perceived. Oh, Carla from Mexico. Hi. Glad to have you here. Now, by this time, I'm usually getting a whole lot of questions about stuff, and I'm not getting a lot, which I think is good. I think this is a good sign. I want you to feel the weight of this. I mean, what we're talking about is a complete 180 from the way the world thinks. From a basic assumption that the world has been laboring under since humans came into being. Especially since the civilized world, with the advent of agriculture in like about 12,000 years ago. This has been the assumption, except in these little pockets of light. You read about this in the Upanishads and the Vedas, which are the earliest religious writings. You see this throughout it in the Hindu tradition. And in the Western tradition, about 3,000 years ago, this idea became solidified. There's always been a sense of, what I perceived exists separate from me, but it got solidified by the Greeks about 3,000 years ago into what became known as classical analysis, and that is now the model of the universe. The universe is made of matter. The way to understand the universe is take everything and take it apart and keep taking it apart and keep taking it apart until you finally get to the fundamental particle, which the Greeks named an atom. Well, then we split the atom and on it goes. But they've been looking for this fundamental element, and as of yet have not found it. 3,000 years, it has not been found. It's still speculating, but the idea that it can't be found because it doesn't exist is just completely outside the realm. It's outside of the realm of this entire line of thinking that is now 3,000 years old. And has its roots in history, and all religious teaching, everything has been like that. I mean, the God that people believed in was an external God that was influencing us. And if you could influence God, it had more power than you, could influence your life, and your life would be better. So if it was prosperous, it was God's will. If I was, if I was impoverished, it's God's will. I really had nothing to do with it. I'm inviting you into this space, the space of absolutely pure being, where there's nothing here but the one sense of being. Even the thoughts you have about yourself right now are not the truth of you. If in fact there's only one infinite being, how could you possibly have a thought about it? You couldn't conceive of it in its entirety, any more than you could conceive of music in its entirety. We can experience an infinite variety of pieces of music and songs, but you can't experience music. You can't imagine music. You can't create a concept of music, and yet that's exactly what they all are. So the essence is unknowable and infinite and unbounded, but every expression of it. But that expression is not matter. This is not a material universe. Pam says, I'm trying to understand. Are you talking about realizing you are universal consciousness? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to that. There's a slight flaw in your approach, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Yeah, I am going to worry about that. What I'm saying is, are you universal consciousness? Am I universal consciousness? Are you universal consciousness? The answer is yes, you are. Right. Now, if you think that you, the person, like me, GP, or you, Pam, or Mark, or Carla, or anybody else on listening, or anybody else in the world, is individually universal consciousness, no. It's not so, any more than a piece of music is all there is of music. In every piece of music, the entirety of music is expressed. Right? In every individual, the entirety of universal consciousness is expressed, but individually. But who you are isn't that mode of expression. You are the universal consciousness. Your music, there's a million songs that can play, but you are not any one of those songs in particular. You are the potential for all songs. So yes, your universal consciousness, as long as by you, the sense of I, identifies with that universal consciousness and does not try to take universal consciousness and identify it as a person. Do you follow that? Which is what most people do. The ego loves to think, oh, I'm universal consciousness, and then grab it and want to manifest everything that it could possibly desire. It's backwards. It's insane, actually. It's the opposite. Let the sense of I be the universal consciousness, and then you will see the universality everywhere. The sense of being a person will simply drop away. There'll be nothing but universal consciousness, and you'll see the sense of the person is simply just a modulation on this ocean of infinite consciousness. Is that clear, Pam? Hello, Dagang from California. Mark says, I think I see the implications of what you're saying, G. We operate on the notion that we are a bunch of separate selves roaming around. This separation makes war and poverty possible. Yes, the sense of separation creates the experience of separation, right? Not the reality. In reality, there is no separation. Right? But we create it the way, like we do in a dream, because we believe in it, and so we create that. We have the experience of that. But because we are ignorant of the fact that what we are experiencing is a projection of our own mind, we think we're actually experiencing the reality of war and poverty rather than the projection of it. And therein lies the problem, and of course, therein lies the solution. It is our belief in it that creates the experience of it. But the experience of it is not the reality of it. The reality is, it is a projection of the mind. Seeing it as a projection of the mind, your power to change it becomes instant. The only thing you have to deal with is the habit of constantly going back to the idea that I'm a separate self. But once you see it, even the habit, its days are numbered. Right? A habit can't persist in this place of pure seeing. It can't. Because even the habit, you'll see it and go, oh, there it is again. It doesn't need to go away. Right? Ever, really, because it becomes irrelevant. I mean, it does, eventually, because there's no energy to sustain it. Right? But at first, it might feel kind of awkward because you can see this thing, and yet your whole life is grinding along in this direction. There is a momentum to things. The vision of seeing this doesn't instantaneously overturn everything. Right? There's some layers that have to be gone through. Ultimately, even all those layers are seen to be nothing but a projection of the mind. And then you're somebody like a Christ, which just, whatever he says happens. Papino, greetings. Oh, exalted one from Arizona. Hi, Papino. When I hear things like that, I know she's being she's kidding, but I mean somebody said that to Christ. They said, "Good master," and asked a question. And he said, "Why are you calling me good? There's none good but God. None good but one, that is God." What he was referring to is the person when he said that, good master, was thinking that he himself personally, this being right here, this person, this human being standing, had all this power, and he was leading their attention away. No, it's not in this form, this body that's appearing. This is only appearance. The power is in God, my true identity, which is God, which is the invisible consciousness. And what we're experiencing is what Buddha referred to as the oh, Papinu is a he. Sorry, couldn't tell. Sorry, man. Sorry, haven't seen a picture. What Buddha referred to it as, he referred to as the absolute truth, and then he referred to as your personal truth. And the absolute truth is unchanging. Everything I'm telling you, it's the absolute truth. It's not going to change. It doesn't matter. It doesn't depend on anything. It doesn't depend on you realizing it. It doesn't depend on anything at all. It simply is the truth, self-existent, self-validated. What we experience is what Buddha referred to as the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. And that is the infinite story of the appearance of Buddhas. No harm. No harm, no foul. Thank you, Papinu. That's what we experience. That's our experience, which is always unique. My experience of Buddha knowledge and your experience of Buddha knowledge will be completely different. completely unique, completely beautiful, and yet it's the same knowledge. I mean, you can see, are you seeing the incredibly beautiful flow and intricacy of this, the intertwinedness of it? Every song is music, and yet every song is different. And in the same song can be played by different people on different instruments and end up being different. It's just this constantly unfolding infinite variations. But they're unfolding from Buddha knowledge. What is the Buddha knowledge? The Buddha knowledge is everything is a projection of your mind. What exists only exists as an idea in the mind. It doesn't exist as an objective fact, which is the end of cause and effect. It's the end of karma. It's the end of the past. It's the end of everything. It is the perfect eternal stillness of now. Just the sense of being that you're having right now. The capacity to hear and understand that you have right now. That's it. That is what Jesus referred to as God, or the Father, or the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God. All the different words he used. That's what he was referring to. This simple sense of being that's right here, right now, conscious, aware, hearing my words, feeling everything, noticing the thoughts, noticing it all. That consciousness is you. That is the divine. That is the perfect conscious being. And from that point of view, the universe becomes the perfect reflection. As Buddha put it, the great perfect mirror mind. It's like the mind being God's mind, through which God sees herself in her infinite variety and is delighted with what she sees. John David, hello John. So along my spiritual awakening, it seems as though my ego has gotten stronger. Any thoughts on this? Don't believe it. That's my first. When you say, I'd like to hear more, when you say my ego has gotten stronger, what is the evidence you're looking at that you have said is, oh, that's my ego getting stronger? I'd like to see what you're actually looking at that you've interpreted as a stronger ego. It would help me better answer your question. Because I'm not sure it's really true. If it is, all it is the entrenched habit energy reacting to your love of and your desire for spiritual awakening. And all it requires is a clearer seeing, clearly discerning what the ego actually is, which is a habit energy of the mind. It's not a thing, right? The ego isn't a thing which can get stronger or weaker. It isn't an entity. It isn't a sentience, right? It's not this thing that can grab you. It exists only as a thought in your mind. Whatever you believe the ego to be, it will be. And all it is the name we've given to the classification of thoughts and ideas that are myself, about I. But that I it's being referred to is the body and the associations and the memory and the past, and all of the stuff that we've already seen is actually nothing but a projection of the mind. So the ego doesn't exist as a thing. It can't get stronger or weaker. Right? So what is it that you're actually looking at that makes you that makes you believe the thought that says, my ego is getting stronger? And where did that thought actually come from? Right? So we can take it apart and see whether or not it's true. Let's see. Papi Nu, when in the midst of a crisis where it is difficult to not see separateness, how do you reset and dissolve duality? Okay, first off, I'm going to do everything today from this point of view, right? That what you're looking at is a projection of the mind. So, circumstances happen in your life. The circumstances do not announce themselves as a crisis. Circumstances are interpreted by a certain state of mind, which then calls it a crisis. The moment it calls it a crisis, it begins to respond to the designation that it's just given it as if it was a crisis, which means it's triggering certain physiological reactions, stress and that sort of thing, behaviors, all sorts of stuff like that, right? The mind decided it was a crisis. The thing didn't announce it itself. To know that means that it is at least possible to remain completely calm in any situation. As a matter of fact, it becomes possible that there are no such things as crises, only stuff happening. And if you were really aware, totally aware of who you were, you'd realize that no circumstance can possibly touch you. So where's the crisis? Now, because you've already designated it a crisis, you are expecting and creating certain reactions to happen, which mean those being, it's difficult to see, to not see separateness, right? So now the sense of separateness becomes something very strong. Why? Because you said it was. You just said it was strong. You said it's difficult, right? Because of this crisis, now it's difficult. Boom. The whole story has begun to cascade and create an experience of reality that is only happening in your mind. How do you reset and dissolve duality? That's how you do it. You see that this is completely a projection of the mind, and it isn't real. That is, it isn't objective. It isn't, the circumstances are always how you interpret them and not the actual circumstances themselves. Does that help? I mean, I'm going right for the juggler, you know. If this was a different group and a different audience, I might be taking it through different kinds of steps with inner reconciliation and the like. But I'm just going right to the end game here. Because ultimately, everything I do is to get you to the point where you see that the entire thing is a fabrication of the mind. And when you see that, you're free of it. You're done with it, right? You don't have to be concerned about it anymore. And then you can begin to know in your heart, which doesn't require circumstances to confirm it, which is the meaning of faith, that everything is absolutely okay. You are immortal and indestructible. You are invincible. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Do whatever you want to this body. It will not affect me. Your body may even scream out in pain and then die. It will have no effect on me whatsoever. John David said, disidentifying, how to stop being, got to scroll back here a little bit, because I had this other one. I asked John about thoughts on the ego getting stronger. And he responded, disidentifying, right? Well, right. When you disidentify, you are taking away the power. Now, at first, there's a habitual reaction as that power goes away. There may be even, it may even get, what's the word I'm looking for? Inflamed. It may actually be kind of reactive. It may feel kind of threatened. And the very thing that you're disidentifying with may appear to be getting stronger. Don't give it a name. Don't say, oh, it's the ego that's really resisting me. There's nothing there resisting you. You're only looking at the habit energy. It's not a thing. You know, any more than, you know, your computer was doing something you didn't want it to do, and you would say, you know, it's really acting up, it's fighting me. The computer isn't fighting you, it's simply doing what it was programmed to do, right? And you're changing the program. And changing in the program, you're introducing instability to this system, and it's going to react to it. But there's nothing there. There's no mind, there's no ego, there's nothing there that's actually reacting, that's getting stronger or weaker. Right? It's not a thing at all. It is simply a play of energy in a particular pattern. You're changing the pattern. The energy is getting destabilized. But if you don't succumb to it, if you don't fall for the trick, for the subterfuge, it'll eventually dissolve and take a new pattern, which is what we call progress and evolution and growth. John asks, how to stop being hijacked by desires and attractions? Great question. I really love this question. The easiest way to do it is to see that desires and attractions are not personal. Now, I'm glad you say, you didn't say, how do I get rid of desires and attractions? Because that's not possible. To get rid of desires is to stop life. Life is nothing but desire. And in fact, desire and fulfillment are the nature of life. It is the nature of the expression. Like in music, you have tension and release, which you also have in lovemaking, right? I mean, the tension and release, that interplay of opposites, is the nature of creation. So you don't want to stop that. How do I keep from getting hijacked by it? When I have invested my happiness in my desires and my attractions, they now take on a different characteristic. They're going up and down, means I'm going up and down. Their fluctuations are my fluctuations. Now, if I don't see them as mine or me, I just see them as a phenomena, then it's like a tree blowing, right? The tree blowing doesn't bug me. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. A desire can come and a desire can go. A desire can come, it can be fulfilled, I'll enjoy it thoroughly, and then at some point it's going to dissolve. It's going to dissolve back into the essence, because nothing is permanent. Even the best relationship in the world that could last an entire lifetime is eventually going to stop at death, right? Something else could happen, but that's a whole different story. So it is really a matter of seeing that there's nothing about a desire that's grabbing you and making you be distracted. The distraction is simply a habit energy, and the habit energy comes from the underlying belief that my happiness depends on this external circumstance, and that this external circumstance, because it is an external circumstance, is outside of my control except through great effort. If it isn't external, if the universe isn't external, if it's all within us, then all I'm doing is projecting my own happiness somewhere it isn't. Turn around and look at the projector. The coming and going of any desire does not determine my happiness. I am the source of all happiness, which allows the desires to come and go and allows for the full enjoyment of everything in life without attachment to it. And Buddha was very clear that attachment and desire were the cause of suffering. But what people don't hear, what he actually said was, attachment to what does not exist is the cause of suffering. And what does not exist is the thing separate from your perception of it. Thinking that your imagination is an objective reality. It's like believing in Mickey Mouse as if he was a real thing. Right? We all know what it is. I mean, it exists as, whoa, almost knocked my disk drive off. He exists as an experience, as a shared idea, as a shared, we like it, or Bugs Bunny, whoever your favorite guy is, SpongeBob or whatever, right? The Simpsons. We all know who they are, right? And yet they don't exist. They exist, and at the same time they don't exist. They don't exist objectively. That's how everything is. Everything. Me included. This room, everything you're seeing. Everything is like that. When you see it like that, there's no need to desire after it because you're the substance of it. What's there to desire? So now desire takes on a different meaning. For most, when desire arises, it immediately triggers a sense of lack. I'm missing something and I need it. But from this point that I'm speaking from, when a desire arises, it's like, oh, it's an unfoldment of my nature. I'm going to see some aspect of myself that I never saw before. And I'm going to experience a deeper love for myself and everything in my reality because what I'm looking at is nothing other than myself. And so it's nothing but love. You following that? Let's see. So that's how you stop being hijacked by desires. There's nothing that can hijack you. Right? There's nothing out there that's grabbing you and stealing you away. They're not entities. Oh, God, please get this. Please get this. There's nothing there. There's no thing there except your own thinking. That's all, folks. speaking of Bugs Bunny, said, why do I keep believing I need all sorts of things from the manifested outer world in order to be someone or be happy? It's just a habit. I mean, you don't actually believe it anymore. You know that it's not true. What you're really asking me is, why when I believe it, I don't believe it? Why do I believe it? It keeps coming, right? Because the habit's going to keep coming, right? There's a beautiful line of a man who came to Jesus and asked him for something, and Jesus said, everything is possible to those that believe. And the man said, Lord, I believe. Help me with my unbelief. That's the question you just asked, because you do believe it. You know it's true. You know you don't need those things to be happy. It doesn't mean you don't need those things in your life. It just means you don't need them to be happy. Do you need a car? Yeah, probably. Unless you live in New York City like me, then you don't. Do you need a place to live? Yes. Do you need food? Yes. Do you need all those things? Yes. Do you need fun stuff? Yes. Do you need self-expression? Yes. Do you need vacations and trips and experiences? Yes. Can you be happy without them? Absolutely. Do you need them to be happy? Do you need them to be who you are? Yes. No, I'm sorry. No, you don't. You need nothing to be who you are, which means you need nothing to be happy. Right? Now, the subtlety here, the thing I continue to point out, is because in a lot of religious traditions, well, I don't need that, therefore I shouldn't have it. No. No. They're there to be enjoyed. The universe is to be enjoyed. The universe is God enjoying herself, seeing herself reflected and delighting in what is seen, or himself, however you want to look at it. It doesn't really matter. God doesn't have a gender. So what we're doing is we're like just saying, you know, like rendering under Caesar. This pleasure, this indulgence, this enjoyment is enjoyable. It's not the source of my happiness. It comes and goes on the background of my happiness. And so all you're doing is experiencing the habit of thinking that it did, and believing that it did, and acting like it did. And look, everybody around you is acting like you need all this stuff to be happy, right? I mean, you hear it all the time. Every commercial is about, you can have this and then you'll be happy. You couldn't possibly be happy now, could you? Because you don't have this. Come and get it now. It's a special, only $3.99, right? This is the way it works. It's always this assertion that you're not happy unless you have something else. This is the world we live in, right? Which makes it kind of difficult. It was predicted, by the way, the fifth epoch of the Buddha's last 500 years. It's going to get so dark. It's very difficult. But these little pockets of light that are showing up to like say, no, none of it is for real. Don't worry about any of it. They're there, which means the path is actually a little bit shorter because there's so much damn darkness right now. But that's the nature of the darkness. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Say, I don't need these things, and then try to be a stoic. You don't do that either. If you want the guitar string to sound perfectly, it can't be too loose or too tight. Too tight, it breaks. Too loose, it doesn't make any good sounds, right? It's got to be just right, and then it's in tune. And that's what you're doing. That's the middle way, right? Happiness is not in the things that I get. I don't need them to be happy. But my happiness is expressed in those things, and I have the experience of happiness. I have the experience of joy. I have the experience of intimacy, of pleasure, of fun, of all that good stuff. And it's completely innocent and open and pure. It has no restrictions on it anymore. And yet you find that you are simply the one infinite consciousness enjoying itself. Is that clear? God, I hope so. This is so good. John David. Maybe my difficulty in this, identifying from what I think of myself as me, that's always at the root of it. Oh, that was before the disidentifying. I see. Yes, that's always at the root of it, John David. Who are you? That's all of this gets down to. Right? If everything you're experiencing is a projection of the mind, then who are you? You're prior to mind. You're more subtle than even mind. You're more subtle than everything you perceive. And if you look at it really closely, without a past, without the future, and without any thoughts about yourself, you find that you're still there. You don't need an identity to be. You don't need anything to be. And that being is the pure being. That's the pure you. Nothing added, nothing needed. You don't need anything to be. Knowing that that is who you are, the entire universe now becomes yourself, the manifestation of yourself, and there's no separation. And there's no condemnation, there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. They're just the natural energy of your nature manifesting itself in the infinite abundance of the universe. And of course, the infinite abundance of the universe is the inexhaustible nature of consciousness. That's what abundance is. Which, by the way, I'm doing a class on that on Tuesday, called Unconditional Wealth, that I invite you all to join. If you're part of my subscription program at MasterHEART Institute, you'll get it. It's part of the subscription program. But if not, it's only $30. It'll be a class, and I'll just be talking about the true nature of wealth. And the true nature of wealth is the infinite, inexhaustible nature of consciousness. But this consciousness, it's so unlimited, it is so free, that it can create images of total bondage and lack. It can. There's nothing off limits to it. Even though bondage and lack don't really exist, right? Doesn't matter. Consciousness can create a universe in which that seems to be a law. It can do anything. Absolutely free, but once you see that, you see the real unhindered nature of consciousness. Well, then of course you're going to say, "Thank you. I prefer wealth and abundance over lack and poverty." So anyway, if you want to sign up for that class, gpwalsh.com/deep-dive, and that's Tuesday. So. Hope you know. So the crisis is preceded by the belief there is a crisis. The crisis is an interpretation of circumstance. The circumstance has no inherent meaning or identification whatsoever. We have to impose or project on it the sense of it being a crisis before it becomes a crisis. If we don't do that, there is no crisis. There's only circumstances. Right? It's very subtle. So the crisis doesn't exist as an entity in and of itself. It doesn't come, I'm a crisis. Oh, there's a crisis. Circumstances happen, then the mind, the habit of the mind will simply say, this is really severe, this is a crisis, and then go into crisis mode. If that doesn't happen, there is no crisis. The crisis does not exist inherently. You're following this. Crisis is a projection of the mind. Without it, there's no crisis. There's only circumstance. Jim Whalen. Yep, so true. Jill Whalen. Sorry, I say Jim. Jill. Yep, so true. Jane. Really interesting about crisis. Very freeing to know I don't have to identify with it. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. Nothing. This is what is meant in Buddhism by emptiness. Nothing you experience has inherent existence. The qualities that make up this glass are actually qualities of consciousness. They're not in the glass. The meaning, purpose. So a set of circumstances appears. They are always neutral unless we decide they have a meaning. They have no inherent meaning. We give it the meaning, and then we experience the consequences of our own thoughts. So you call it a crisis. You're going to have a cascade of thoughts and feelings that are going to fall out of that story. If you call it a grand opportunity, all of the elements of a grand opportunity are going to fall out of that. If you call it a shift in consciousness for humanity, then all of the stuff that goes along with the shift in consciousness of humanity is going to happen. You can always choose a better path for humanity, but the real freedom is knowing that the thing itself has no meaning whatsoever, which of course frees you to give it the highest possible meaning it could have in any given moment. So I will refer to the chaos going on in the world as the shift of human consciousness out of the material model into the consciousness model. That's how I refer to it. Right? Because to me, that's the closest I can get to the absolute truth, which is it's all a projection of the mind. And it leads people up to the place of empowerment where we can literally create a universe we all like, a universe of infinite capacity, because that's exactly what it actually is. And we'll see it no longer as a delusion. The projection will be a projection of reality. It will be the great perfect mirror mind, and not this thing that we've created, this monstrosity that we've created. It's terrifying and stupid and ugly and dark. Let's see, John David. It seems as though I'm more of an a-hole. Well, as long as you know it, right? I mean, the moment you go, you know, the people who are really assholes are the ones who don't know it. They think they're something else. The moment you know it, nobody chooses to be an a-hole, right? The moment you become aware of it, the a-hole is on it. These days are numbered, so don't worry about it. Wow. Puppy New. It is really hard to believe that I intentionally create crisis through belief when the crises are so unpleasant. Am I really the one creating all this unpleasantness? It's not intentional. I mean, you're judging yourself. Oh, I'm creating it. It's not this conscious decision we set up, right? It is the habit energy of the mind. It's beliefs we have that are just ingrained in the nervous system. We don't even know them as beliefs. We're not even aware of them as beliefs. What we're doing here is bringing the light of consciousness to it all, so that you can see through this habit energy and intentionally manifest that which is closer to the truth of your being. That's what this is all about. See, hard to believe that I intentionally, because you didn't, through the belief when crises are so unpleasant, right? The unpleasantness or pleasantness of an experience is not in the experience. It's your interpretation of it. You keep thinking that there's an unpleasant experience and a crisis, and I'm creating this unpleasant experience. You're creating an unpleasant experience out of an experience that isn't unpleasant. It is just neutral. A different state of mind could look at that and go, wow, this is a great opportunity. Same experience. You keep thinking that the thing itself is unpleasant, rather than you interpreting it as unpleasant. If it was inherent that a particular set of circumstances would be unpleasant, it would be unpleasant for everybody. Nobody could escape it, because it's inherent in the thing. But the fact that we can all experience the same thing and have a different experience means that the experience isn't in the thing. That means you're free to choose a different way of looking at it and have a completely different experience. And because the characteristics don't belong to the thing, you're not stuck with it. Nothing's holding you. All it takes is a switch, the flip of a switch, and the shift of perception. And wham, you're in a different universe. But you have to get to the point where you see that I'm not creating the circumstances per se. I'm creating my interpretation of them, which is determining whether I'm having a pleasant life or an unpleasant one. That's all you. Does that answer the question? John David, and it's got, oh, good Lord, I get to love. It's gotten to where I'm questioning whether or not I'm on the right track with this. If you're questioning whether you are or not, then you are. In Buddhism, they call it the great doubt, right? And again, I would invite you to say, what is the evidence you're looking at that's making you say I'm not on the right track, right? The only way you can say I'm not on the right track is you have some kind of sense of where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, well, then maybe you are on the right track and you just don't know it, right? So what is it you're looking at that's making you conclude that you're not on the right track? Because it's an interpretation. I might not be on the right track. If it's just a doubt, you have to be on the right track. You are the self. You are the conscious reality. It's not like you're something trying to become the conscious. You are that. So how can you get off the track? You can't be off the track. Just know who you are. That's all you have to do. And everything will line up to make that personal realization of Buddha knowledge more apparent. everything will line up because that is your real destiny. That's the only thing that's happening. You're on that track, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you doubt it or not. It's simply the fact. The truth, remember, Buddha said that the truth, the ultimate absolute truth, existed whether you're aware of it or not. So the truth of your being is there, right? What we're doing is we're awakening to it. And the awakening to it is coming from it. It is not coming from you trying to get to it. It's going, come on, over here. Am I on the right track? Am I on the right? Just come over here. But am I on the right track? It's okay, just come over here. I mean, it's just kind of beckoning you. Come here, baby, come here. Come here. Come to Papa, right? I mean, however you want to look at it. Are you saying, let's see, are you saying to stay in a place, oh, wait, I'm the dreamer of the dream. I am the dreamer of the dream. Barbara, I am the dreamer of the dream. You are the ultimate dreamer dreaming that they're having a dream. There's a nice roundabout one, isn't it? Let's see, Papinu. Who, without crisis, I won't be important, and I am too important and I have crises. Yeah, now that's an investment. I think you might want to change your mind about that one, right? Yeah, it does. A lot of people love it. There's a lot of people who really like, they're, you know, the mind loves having problems, and if it doesn't have any, it'll create them. The idea of just absolute peace and flow, the mind doesn't like it. It's got nothing to do. It just has to kind of go off on the side and wait until you need it for something. Where is the link for unconditional wealth? gpwalsh.com. Actually, let me type it in here really quick. http://gpwalsh.com/deep dive. Did I spell that correctly? I did. There it is. Should show up. Okay, good. Dave. Hi, Dave. That's why I love the game changer quote you mentioned before from St. Francis of Assisi. That which you are looking for is where you are looking from. Yep. Yeah, it's just right to the point. Rumi put it like this. He said, I went looking for myself. I found only God. I went looking for God. I found only myself. It's where you are looking from. That's who you are. And notice that where you are looking from cannot be seen. Like a scale can't weigh itself. Fire can't burn itself. A knife can't cut itself. You can't know yourself. You can only know what you experience. You can only know an object. You cannot know that which is not an object. That's why this seems mysterious. You don't know you. You are you. Being and knowing are one. It's where you're looking from right now. It's who's hearing me. It's where you're hearing from right now. It's what's actually doing the hearing. It's not the body. It's not the brain. It's not the ears. It's not the microphone. That's not hearing anything. You are consciousness. And you don't need any explanation or ideas or sense of being a person or a finite or separate. You need none of these spiritual concepts to be that and to know it. You do know it because you are it. You know you exist. Nobody needs to tell you that. You don't need anybody verifying. You don't have to take a quiz. And nothing in the universe could convince you that you did exist if you didn't. So your existence is simply an irrevocable truth. That quote from Mark said, Dave, that quote from Assisi is the ultimate truth. Yes, that's the ultimate truth. And it's a beautiful truth because it's a truth of the heart. I mean, the fact that it came from a monk like St. Francis, who was a Christian mystic. I mean, he saw. I understand that when he was, as he was approaching death, he started to laugh. And the closer he got to death, the more he was laughing. And everybody thought he was going crazy. And in fact, he was just in utter bliss. As he was just, as more and more was just falling away. And he was entering into the bliss of pure being. Calvin Parker. Hello, Calvin. Truth and the interpretation is coming from the program data and information from past experiences. Yes. Yeah, there's the truth, which is simply the neutral, you know, what is happening, and then the imperpetation is coming from the mind, and the mind is nothing more than the programmed responses. It's just this happens, therefore this happens, right? And it's just kind of a built-in thing. So this circumstance happens, I call it a crisis. This circumstance happens, and I call it a blessing. This one happens, I call it an opportunity. This one happens, and I call it a heartbreak. But none of those characteristics are inherent or implicit in the actual circumstances. They're added on later. Take away everything that's added on, and you see reality absolutely pure, like through the eyes of a child. But unlike the child, this actually gives you an authority. You are not just a passive observer anymore. Your observing is literally creating a universe. You're watching the universe be created before your eyes. And so you're going to experience multiple universes simultaneously arising. We call that our desires. We call that our ambitions. We call that our intentions and our decisions. But we only can call it a decision or intention from if we take the point of view of a person. If we take the point of view of pure consciousness, it's the intention of God that this is going to happen. Including it's the mundane things like want a house or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a car or more money. If there's no person there, if you're not identified with anything, that's simply the consciousness desiring to experience that, at which point it just has it because there's nothing standing in the way. And the deeper the desire, the more blissful the fulfillment. This is the nature of the dynamic aspect of consciousness, as opposed to the absolute aspect of consciousness, which is the pure, desireless state of freedom. Thank you, Calvin. Mannix mix, if circumstances are neutral and there's freedom to give meaning, who chooses the meaning? You do, right? Consciousness chooses the meaning. And it really is, it's what I'm talking about here is the bodhisattva path. Because if you take this as an absolute, you say, well, nobody is choosing the meaning, it's just happening. And that's okay. That in Buddhism, they refer to that as the arhat, or the pratyeka Buddha, which is the Buddha, the lone Buddha, the one who's just seeking for enlightenment, is just disregarding all of that. The bodhisattva path, which is the real, which is what the Buddha actually taught, the Mahayana, the big vehicle, the great vehicle, the bodhisattva path, is to be engaged in the process of improving human life up to the point where you fulfill the bodhisattva vow, which is to save all beings from suffering. So when I say I am making a better choice, I'm referring to consciousness. I'm referring to the bodhisattva energy that is working as me. So I'm creating a better reality. Why? Because the better reality needs to be created for God? No. It does for you. It does for everybody else. It does for the suffering beings. And the bodhisattva vow is to save all beings from suffering. And so the who then becomes, well, it's just me, whoever I am, right? And don't think me as a person, me as pure consciousness. Whoever I am is choosing the best in this moment, is choosing the most equitable, the most fair, the most loving, the most giving, the most truthful, the closest to the ultimate reality we can get. That's the bodhisattva approach. And so I'm more than happy to talk on the level of, manifesting my dreams or finding my soulmate. I'm happy to do that. Matter of fact, the deep dive classes they're going to be like that, right? Because I'm wanting to attract an audience of people who know nothing about what we're talking about here. So we can save beings from suffering. We can bring people out of their ignorance, right? A little improvement, then another improvement, and another improvement, and sometimes somewhere along the way, something just goes poof. There's a couple people on this call who've experienced that, right? Not even looking for it, and suddenly they found themselves having this heavenly experience. It's to me, it's the right way to do it, and I'm shored up by the fact that Buddha said this is the right way to do it. So if he says it, I'm in, right? Let's see. SS. Why does the mind always look for problems? And what might happen in the future? How can we stop that pattern of thoughts? Again, it's a habit. The mind has been habituated into solving problems. And it takes satisfaction in solving the problems. And therefore, if it doesn't have a problem to solve, it wants to create one. It's just habit energy, right? You really get used to that term, habit energy. That's all it is, right? The rest of it? Yes. And it's always concerned about what might happen in the future, because what might happen in the future is a big unknown, right? Because it's a big unknown, it's a blank canvas, it's going to paint stuff on it. Now, if you become conscious and take control over that, you're going to paint really nice pictures on that future. You're going to decide, well, I'm going to have this. I'm going to have these nice things. I'm going to end world hunger. You can decide all of that and paint it on the picture. If you don't, the habit energy, which is stuck in a position of simply wanting to defend itself, will imagine all sorts of things in the future that it has to defend itself, which gives it problems to solve right now. Which also means that even though you're actually quite safe in this moment, you won't be able to feel safe, because your mind's projected all of this stuff that could happen in the future, and now you're working now to prevent something happening in the future, which probably is never going to happen, but it gives the mind something to do. This is the habit, folks, and this is Shiva's wheel. It's just a loop we're stuck in, and all you have to do to step out of it is go, damn, there it is again, and just step back. And you can even take that exercise. You can make it an exercise. Well, I don't know what the future is. I've habitually associated with defending myself about what could go wrong. Why don't I start painting pictures of what could go right? I actually have a process I developed called teleporting, which is kind of visualization on steroids, to give that experience. And it's very powerful. It's a very useful thing to do. I'm not denying the need to manifest stuff. I need stuff. Look around. Look at all you guys can't see all the equipment around me that makes all of this happen, and the systems. And I couldn't do any of this without. I need this. I need this in order for me to express myself in the way that I do. So I'm not against manifesting. But you can notice it in something like that, and it's really beautiful. The mind habitually projects what it's afraid of, because it's trying to keep itself safe. The dominant energy is self-protection, because it assumes that it's not safe. Right? So if you realize that that's just an assumption, it's okay that the desire to remain safe is there. It's not going to go away. It's inherent in all of us. But we can certainly not project it on a future where we have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen, therefore we can decide what's going to happen. We can just paint a different picture. Oh, that's going to happen. I'm going to put all of my energy into that happening. I'm going to start acting as if that's going to happen. I'm going to get $1 million from out of nowhere. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Nothing at all. And in fact, it's exactly the same energy that right now is just being absorbed in, oh, I might lose my job, I better brush up my resume, or I better save, I better not buy that because I might run out later. It's the same energy. You're just taking control over it now and say, look, it's okay, thank you for protecting me, but we don't really need to do this right now. Tell you what, we're going to look at this instead. How does it feel to look at a picture of abundance, and suddenly you go, well, that feels pretty good. And suddenly now you're feeling good now, instead of when all of the things that could go wrong have been shored up against, because guess what? In a day, got a new picture, a new look, new things are going to be projected, and the same habit energy is going to be doing it. So you might as well start now projecting a future you'd actually like to see. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing unspiritual about that. There's nothing that isn't non-dual about that. It's really taking ownership of the fact that my perceptions are everything. So paint a picture that you and the rest of the world would love, and see what happens. Power. You have the power. Pam, it's so easy for us who are in the safety of the West to go along with what you're saying, but I can't imagine how people in war zones or starving could accept this. If I was talking to people starving or in war zones, I would have to take a very different approach. Because yes, I mean, I couldn't talk to somebody like this. We have a degree of safety that allows us, that is being threatened, of course, right now, but it allows us to do just that. It allows us this luxury. Right? I mean, if somebody comes to me and they're hungry, I don't teach them that hunger is not real, it's just a projection of the mind. I give them something to eat, right? That's the bodhisattva vow. You take care of them where they are. What we need to do, we need to stop starving them. We need to stop taking the resources that are making them starve, and we got to stop stealing from them, which is putting us into war. That's the moral decision we have to make. We have to aggressively and assertively stop the immoral greed that is running the world. That's how you do it. Right? Then we can bring these kinds of messages to people. Right? You do it however you can, whether it be, down the street or, people are suffering everywhere. Yes, we have a lot of material prosperity here, but boy, do we have a lot of craziness. We have a lot of pain. We have a lot of fear. Somebody I knew, a long time ago, back in California when I lived there, back in the 80s, had gone, made the great effort to go to be with Mother Teresa in Calcutta and work with all of the, people she worked with. She shows up, this woman shows up, she's, at her own expense. There she is, she's standing, she finally meets Mother Teresa, and she, I'm so happy to meet you. I've come all the way from Chicago to help you help these people. And Mother Teresa looked at her and says, oh, honey, isn't there anybody in Chicago you can help? Don't think because we have a certain level of prosperity here that people aren't suffering. They are. And I'm overjoyed when I hear my message getting to obscure places like Pakistan and the Philippines and parts of India and other places that are distressed. We can still create a reality that includes them, and then we can let that energy unfold. Boy, I'm so glad you brought that up. Right, alleviate suffering wherever you can, what's ever brought to you, and alleviate it completely from your mind. Your holding of them at a level, your image of them getting what they need, being protected and being safe will in fact contribute to that happening. You will create reality for them. That's the bodhisattva vow. Are you following this? Beautiful, 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 beautiful. John David, maybe my problem lies in still thinking there is myself and other. Yeah, just start with realizing who you are. Pure consciousness. You can't know yourself, John David. You can't come up with any image of yourself and say, oh, that's me. I think that's really where you're making a mistake, myself and other. Right? Forget about the sense of separation right now. You can't know yourself because you're not a thing that can be known. The fire can't burn itself, right? It can't because it's one. Consciousness cannot see itself because it is everything. It can't stand aloof from itself and look at it. So what it's looking at is actually within it. It's simply looking at itself from the inside. And what it sees is what we experience as the universe. You are that. Anything less is simply not true. So just really relax into the truth of that. Let go of the struggle with it. Let go of trying to figure it out. And just let the truth of it touch your heart. It will. This is a living truth. This is not an intellectual truth. I see. It's a living truth. It's life itself. It's your life. It's your very being. Dagang asks, if I exist, I exist. I don't exist as X. Correct. Any self-image is an illusion. Correct. Even the image of pure consciousness is not ultimately the truth. No, it is not. It is an image. And I'm using words, of course. We have to use words. So I'm expressing it in words, but I'm pointing you to that which is beyond words. Yes, the ultimate truth can't be put into a word. That's why Ramana Maharshi, some people would ask him a question, as well as the Buddha. And he simply wouldn't answer. Silence. That was the answer. It's not he didn't answer. The answer was silence. The ultimate is just the silence. You cannot put a word on what you are. You can only be it. And so we're using these to express it, and I'm just keep turning the attention back and back and back to the place from which all the words come, until you're beyond the need of words, and then you become the master of words. Why? To save all beings from suffering. Not so you can be a great, eloquent speaker, but so you can save beings from suffering. That's what it's for. You go up the mountain for yourself, you come down the mountain for everyone else. That's all folks said. Thank you, GP. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. SS, do you think a good way to live life is experiencing everything arises without interpretation? That is no. That's kind of a nihilistic approach. What I do is recognizing that no interpretation is the absolute truth. I simply choose an interpretation that is closest to the highest good, the most loving, the most compassionate, the most equitable, the most kind, the most safe, the most fun, the most creative, the most liberating, the most self-affirming. So I simply create the universe as I'm going. And I create it out of this highest sense. I'm not uncreating the universe to leave nothing. That's kind of the Advaita approach that many take, and I don't agree with it. The Bodhisattva approach is, I create a better universe. Right? By seeing that all dharmas, all teaching, all circumstances, all objects are empty of inherent meaning, it gives me the freedom to alleviate suffering. So I create any scenario in which suffering is alleviated. Does that make sense? Doesn't that feel a lot better than just kind of sitting in a void where nothing has any meaning? I give it the most beautiful meaning the moment requires. So now I'm not aloof from life, I'm totally engaged in life, and at the same time, I am beyond life. You following? SS, because the mind always wants things to be different or better. Yes. Yes, that's absolutely correct. The mind always wants something to be different or better, but you don't. Right? You don't. You recognize that the perfection of everything, and then you can participate in the world as it is. Play with it as it is. Work with it as it is. It frees you to be fully in the world and not separate from the world. The mind needs things to be different in order to be happy. You don't. And so what you're really doing is you're corralling the mind. Right? You are retraining the mind. You are transforming the mind from the psychological, habitual conditioned mind into the great perfect mirror mind, the servant of the highest truth. Messages held for review. Chosen one, GP. Retention or celibacy beneficial for spiritual improvement. I'll show it. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know either. Oh, they wanted me to negotiate that one. Not quite sure why. Is semen retention? I use the word semen. So yeah, YouTube wanted to make sure it was okay. Of course it's okay. Semen retention or celibacy beneficial for spiritual improvement and other areas of our lives. I see everybody talks about this no FAP stuff and retraining our sexual energy life force. I did not take a vow of celibacy. I haven't yet, and at this point I don't think I'm going to, okay? There is nothing about the pleasure, physical pleasures of sex and intimate relationships, even recreational sex, that has any bearing whatsoever on whether you awaken or not, unless it becomes Another thing we get so attached to that we're not happy unless we get it. Right? It just becomes something else that's a part of life. I highly recommend for couples that are committed to each other, right, that they learn Tantra, that they learn tantric techniques. It's incredibly enhancing because they starts from it takes the sex act out of being an object-oriented thing, which it is for most of us in the West, and turns it into something of the moment. It's an exploration of intimacy. You're there to explore each other. And when it's done correctly, it can release an enormous amount of trauma and unprocessed material, especially for women. And it's great to just honor each other in the most beautiful and intimate and loving and innocent ways. So it takes off of it all of the overhead, all of the shame, all of the guilt, all of the taboos, and lets you experience it purely. Now, Tantra, if you look at it at the word, the Tantra in Sanskrit simply means to weave. And what you're doing, and if you've taken the classes like Delusion to Awakening that I did, which isn't available anymore except in level 3 of Inner Reconciliation, I make the point that my approach is twofold. On one side, it is inquiry, like we're doing now, really being really very precise about the nature of perception and the mind and what's true and what isn't. And that's Vedanta. That is the path of vichara, or inquiry. But the other path, the path, I call it the yoga of wisdom. The other path, I call the yoga of allowing, and that is the path of Tantra. And that is the weaving of this vision into our daily lives, into every part of our lives, including sex and our intimate relationships. Imagine your sexual relationship being totally open and innocent and fun and pleasuring and not demanding and going on for hours as a result, because there's no object in it. It's simply in the moment. You can give it a sacredness. So it's quite literally water becoming wine, heaven coming down to earth in this very important part of our lives. It is a very rare individual that really is called to a path of celibacy and monkhood and things like that. Very, very rare. And if you look at that, some of them reach enlightenment, and you look at them, and some who don't do the celibacy thing, they reach enlightenment too. So it has no bearing on it whatsoever. It's just whatever your path is to be. So don't study it like a sex technique, because if you do that, you objectify sex and you ruin the entire thing. Study it as a way of allowing yourself to explore the intimacy of relationship through this means, rather than simply, better sex. It'll completely transform your experience. I guarantee it. Thanks for asking that question. It's funny that YouTube said, asked me if I wanted to show it or not. Huh, interesting. Just because you used the word semen. Clear. Wow. Okay. We're a grown-up group here. I don't think we have any kids here. Is it always necessary to project advantageous thoughts, or can we just be calm and serene, attracting calm and serene people, places, and things? Well, but that is an advantageous thought, right? Genuine calmness and sereneness is thoughtless. It has no thought whatsoever. It's the absolute, which is pure. It's the still waves, right? But the still waters. But then there's a little ripple in the water, and that's what we experience as the dynamic consciousness. So when you're talking about attracting calm and serene people because you're just being calm, that itself is thought, right? And that's an advantageous thought. So yes, I want to attract calm and serene people into my life, which you have. There are plenty right here that are listening with you. I'm calm and serene, and I'm in your life. So you have been doing it, right? But it's okay to desire stuff too. It's okay to desire things. It's all innocent. If you need a car, you need a car. You need a car, you say, I'm going to have a car. Period. That's it. That's all you have to do. And the energy will eventually unfold to make that happen for you. Don't turn it into, a big deal. Don't turn it into this major thing. And is it all right that I have a car, and does God approve of having a car? All of that's projections of the mind. It's very simple. All desires are innocent. The thing comes up. I want to be with people who are peaceful and calm. That is a desire. It would never even occur to you for that if it was perfect, if it was desireless, right? Which is the ultimate. But I can't describe the ultimate. I describe it as peaceful and calm, but our mind, sees that like peaceful and calm people, serene people, that kind of thing, certain attributes and characteristics. I can't actually describe the ultimate serenity and calmness because it is beyond even the words calmness and serenity. It has no attributes. It just is that. Is that clear? Let's see. Dave says, be the change you want to see. Amen. There's no way to peace because peace is the way. Yes. Want peace? Be peace. I always say you can't make a mansion out of PVC pipe and canvas. You're going to make a mansion out of what mansions are made of. You can't make a gold statue out of clay. You can't make a happy life out of a miserable day. You have to choose to embody happiness at every moment. But when you realize that there's nothing stopping you from doing that, the only thing stopping you are your beliefs about the universe, believing that the conditions are creating your happiness rather than your happiness creating the universe. Once you see that, I can just do it right now, you find your nature is actually happiness, and it becomes very easy to just choose it. Choose it. Choose it. We're not throwing decision making out. We're bringing it home to the true chooser, which is simply the same being that animates everything. Papinu says, veterans who have been in war are a tough bunch to talk to. I have talked to Buddhists about it. I know, I take that back. I worked with combat veterans from the Vietnam War, from the Iraq War, both Iraq wars, and also from the war in Afghanistan. I worked with them. With them, I used EFT. Yes, talking like that to them would have been a waste of time. They needed relief, so I brought it. I brought relief. One guy couldn't move his arm. Took about 45 seconds. He was going, "What'd you do to me?" He was this really big guy, and he was like this. Look over. Says, "What did you just do?" And I was like, "Oh, geez, I'm about to get my ass kicked." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "I can move my arm." He was like amazed. He was just like over the top. Energy healing. I used the energy healing. It would have been cruel for me to have tried to do this with them. They're in pain. I fixed their pain first. Then we can talk about this. I didn't have the chance to talk to this about that. It doesn't matter. One guy hadn't been out. That one guy had not gone shopping in the middle of the day for 40 years. He would go in the middle of the night to whatever was open to his shop because he was just afraid of what he might do if he went off, if his PTSD went off. He was afraid of who he might hurt. And it worked. It took a while. It took about a month. But he was finally, like the day he walked into Walmart all by himself, he said, "Gee, I went to a movie in the evening with my wife." He hadn't done that in 40 years. You do that. If you know some healing techniques, use them. And just be clear about who you're dealing with, the point, and what you need to bring. You're here to relieve suffering. Relieve it. And leave the rest to God. Don't worry about the rest of this. Relieve the suffering. See, Brian in Virginia. For me, this is one of the most meaningful satsangs to date. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the direction it went. It's always funny because when I sit down here, I don't know what's going to happen. But it really felt good, didn't it? It really did work. Barbara, good night. Oh, yeah, Barbara's in Sweden. It's getting very late over there. Mark C. I agree, Brian. Pure gold. SS. Beautiful, thank you. Buddha's brain, hey. Checking in. Anything you can share about being with a chronic condition like cancer? Yeah, be with it, first off. Don't think you know what causes it. Don't believe anything the doctors say, but don't not do what the doctors tell you to do. If it's for you or somebody else, it makes a difference. I'm not going to sit here and give you medical advice. That would be irresponsible on my part. It's kind of a hard thing to do it generically, because at the root of all physical illnesses, in my opinion, and it is my opinion, and I'm not a doctor, um, is some kind of emotional thing going on. If you can get to the emotion through EFT, a friend of mine, Nicole Sachs, who specializes in chronic pain, has a thing she calls journal speak, which is based on the same thing. Her and I are going to do a workshop together at some point. It's for getting at the underlying emotional energy. Now, will it fix the cancer? I cannot promise that, because, again, it would be irresponsible for me to say that. But, there's the experience you're having, and then there's your interpretation of the experience and the emotional reactions. We certainly can clear away all of the interpretation and emotional reactions and get to the pure experience. And I am one to believe that will create such a different environment that the cancer cells can't survive. But I'm just saying that. I can't, again, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. This is just my opinion. But I do know that the medical treatment only deals with the actual physiology and the like. It does not deal with the emotional state. So the emotional state needs treatment. EFT is something that I use a great deal. But again, there's this journal speak, which I think is really good. That's for people with chronic pain, and other things as well. But see to the emotion. Become emotionally neutral, even about something like this, and watch the results. Watch what happens. It will have an impact. You can't help it. Pompino says, very interesting question, Buddha's brain. And then he says, the satsang is better than triple espresso. Yeah. Chosen one. I just don't know how to get answers from deep meditation. I tried. I realized I'm calmness and stillness, but I still can't get answers to specific questions. Then stop trying. It's kind of like you're trying to force it. Come on, give me an answer, God damn it. Give me an answer. Don't force it. Just relax. Pose the question and then let go of it. Let the energy itself work with it. This is a relationship, right? Not ruler to subject, but to leader and devoted followers. You're the vision. You want to take the entire system somewhere, but you can't go alone. You want to take the whole group somewhere, but you can't go alone. Everybody's got to do their part. You're a team, right? Teams win championships, not somebody, right? So you're the leader of this internal energy. So in the meditation, you get the calmness and just pose a question and then let go of it. So you know what? Whenever you guys are ready, good time, I need an answer for this. Thank you very much. I love you. Do it. Take that spirit to it and watch what happens. You'll be amazed. Yeah. Maximum, agree with Brian. Thank you. Goosebumps. Satsang. Oh, wonderful. You guys are getting off of this. Yay. Jane. First time I experience a satsang, it's being enlightening and mind-opening. Whoa. Wow. That one kind of stops me in my tracks. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Wow. Beautiful. Jason Scott. I showed up a little late, but yes, this has been a super great one. Greetings from Florida. I'm a veteran, and I couldn't be a bigger Inner Reconciliation fan. Thank you. Wow, and a veteran too. Thank you, Jason. Judy says, another awesome satsang. Thanks, Gene. Yeah, 5:38. I guess it's time. Poppy, if you don't get an answer, go get a sledgehammer and beat the crap out of it. Yeah. What not to do. Thank you for the not. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. Oh, thank you all. Yeah, 5:38. I think it's time for me to kind of like settle down for the evening. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate it. The chosen one. Thank you, GP. That's a good approach. Thank you, guys. It's extremely meaningful to me that so many people show up. There are like 45 people here to hear this message. It isn't the message you hear most places. There's only a few other places I know of, a few other teachers I know of that deliver the message like this. So the fact that it's getting across, that it's being heard, that it's touching people's lives is extremely gratifying to me, because this is why I'm here. This is why I've hung around. If it wasn't for this, I'd just move on. What's the point? This is my bodhisattva vow, and I will stay here as long as it takes. So thank you all. I love you. Namaste. Great group energy. Every time I bookmark a new satsang and think it's the best one, a better one arises the next week, and I have to bookmark that one too. Very good. I love you all. Thanks.